Hello, gorgeous woman, and welcome back to my channel. Now, if you haven't been in my world, if you're not familiar with me, my name is Bethany, and here at The Curated Feminine, I help women to deepen their relationship with the feminine. I help women to enhance their careers, their romantic relationships, their friendships, and really elevate every area of their lives so they can become the woman on their vision board. And we do all of that through the lens of feminine energy and psychology. So today we're going to be speaking about something important and deep. This is a deep topic today, and something that I think we're not talking about nearly enough as women. And it's the concept of the mother wound. So my videos are always highly practical. So I've got a Bachelor of Science with a major in psychology. I have been coaching women for over 3 years, and so I don't make videos for nothing. I make videos so that you can actually take steps to heal yourself. And then if you want to go further, you can reach out and work with me, right? But these videos are always super, super practical. So I'm going to take you through the different kinds of mother wounds that you can have. So if your mother is like this, here's the signs of it, and this is what kind of wounding you can have. So we're going to go through everything in depth, and then we're going to talk about how to actually heal every type of mother wound. So you'll have different types of mothers and the dysfunctions that they can have, and then how that actually manifests in issues in your life. So here's how you know if this video is for you. So if you have felt like you have trouble having your own identity, if you feel like you have kind of a loss of individuality, if you think of your mother and you feel like you need to be the total and complete opposite, if you feel like you've got a lot of perfectionist tendencies and everything seems just out of balance for you, like you try and nothing is ever quite good enough, if you feel like you're unworthy of love in any way, or if you tend to have more of a either an anxious or an insecure attachment style, or more so if you've been in my world for a while, you know that my videos are always super, super practical. My goal is that you can watch a video and walk away with actual tangible, actionable steps to help you solve something, right? Because we're not here just to devour information and do nothing with it. That's exhausting. We're here to actually solve issues in our lives so that we can have the life on our vision board, the life that we're striving towards, so we can be happier, more peaceful, more fulfilled, all the things, right? So I'm going to give you really actionable steps. So first, here's how you know if this video is for you, if this will apply to you. If you have issues with relationships where you have trouble communicating, if you have trouble really connecting with others, if you have trouble with self-sabotage, where you get to a certain point and then you're ruining things for yourself and you just can't quite pinpoint why. If you have mental health challenges like depression, like anxiety, or even body image issues, if you have a lot of really negative self-talk, like your inner voice, she's not nice, she's a bully, she's got issues with you and she lets you know, if that's a consistent running theme in your life. Or if you have issues with perfectionism, oh my God, perfectionism is a huge one. I work with my clients all the time with perfectionism because it's so sneaky. It seems like excellence, and actually it's you sabotaging your own life. So if you tend to have perfectionist tendencies where you feel like nothing's ever good enough, you've got a lot of black and white thinking, or if you have fear, like fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of failure, and this tends to really be an overarching theme in your life and it really holds you back, then you likely have some kind of a mother wound. So we're going to dive into all of that today. So stereotypically, when you're watching a movie and there's a psychologist, they'll be like, tell me about your parents. It does actually start with your parents. It really, really does. Or your caregiver. And there is a reason why it's a stereotype. Stereotypes often come from something. So normally when you're experiencing any kind of mental health issue, when you're experiencing strife, when you're experiencing marital or relationship issues, it comes from either your mother or your father. Now, the good news is just because they behaved a certain way or you perceived them to behave a certain way, because the way that we view our parents is through the lens of a child, right? The issues, the traumas, the wounds that you would have experienced as a child, and all of us have something somewhere, right? The issues that you experienced as a child have to do with your perception of them. And so as an adult, if you're able to go through and do inner child healing and resolve the issues that you had or your perception of the issues that you experienced in childhood, you can put yourself on the path to healing and therefore overcome the issues that are manifesting in your life. All right, so I'm going to start with the different types of mothers and the issues that can manifest from these types of mothers. So first, I'll preface this with saying this is based on the work of Carl Jung, who's one of the founding fathers of psychology. He's incredible. So much of what I teach my clients, so much of what I truly believe in my own personal life is based on Jung. So the first mother archetype is the overly possessive or the really enmeshed mother. So this is a mother that has a lot of difficulty allowing her child to be independent. So she has this need to feel needed. She's also called the devouring mother, right? So she has this really strong emotional grip on her child. And what happens with mothers like this, and some signs of this, I'll take you through the signs first. So if growing up you had a mother who was all up in your business all the time, who constantly needed to know exactly what you're doing at all times, exactly who you're with. If you had a mother who would get upset if you didn't agree with her beliefs, if you had a mother who just really struggled to let you be fully independent, then you likely had an overly possessive mother. So the impact that this has as a child is that you tend to internalize your mother's desires, right? You find it really difficult to distinguish between their needs and your needs, and their views and your views. And so when you become an adult, this tends to manifest as a kind of codependency because you don't have your own identity. So instead you cling to the identity of your partner, or you cling to the identity of your girlfriends. This is an issue, right? So the possessive mother or the devouring mother is sneaky because in some cultures this is very, very common. And it's so common that it's internalized as normal. So to give you an example, I married into an Eastern European culture. There is so much about my husband's culture that I really, really love. There's so much of it that I've ingrained into my daughters, like the level of hospitality, like the importance of family, which is something I think in Western society we miss out on, right? Family is extremely important. However, parts of his culture are perfect. They're like the right breeding ground for the devouring mother, where it's like you have to agree with everything in the culture, you have to agree with the viewpoints, and if you go too far outside of that, you're the issue, you're the black sheep. And also, a lot of mothers in my husband's culture feel like they don't always develop their own sense of purpose, right? Everything is around them serving their family. And so if their children seem to be getting too independent, it's like they crumble and they panic. So they do everything they can to keep their children dependent on them. Not because they're nasty human beings, not because they're bad, not because they're evil, but because they don't have their own sense of purpose, right? So it's important to know that with all these different maternal archetypes, like dark maternal archetypes, it's not necessarily because they're out to get you or they're abusive. Sometimes it's simply because it's something that's ingrained in the culture, or they're missing their own identity. And so these issues carry throughout the relationship with you, right? Because sometimes it's not about us, it's about them. It's a them issue and things that they need to heal within themselves. So that's really important to know. All right, so first type is the devouring mother or the overly possessive mother. The second is the narcissistic or the self-centered mother. So a mother with narcissistic tendencies prioritizes her own needs and her self-image over her child's individuality. So this can be kind of common in more elevated circles. This was really common in the 1950s as well, where a mother can be really demanding and critical because she wants her child to mirror her expectations. You can see this in some Eastern cultures too, where it's like, you must become a doctor, you must become this, you must do that, you must stand up straight, you must speak this way, you must have manners, otherwise I look bad. You can't make me look bad. So really common in collectivist cultures. And again, there's a beauty and a downside to every culture around the world. So I'm not picking on any of them. There's issues with the West, there's issues with the East, there's beautiful upsides and there's downsides as well. That's part of human nature. So the impact of a narcissistic mother or a really self-centered mother is a child will feel really inadequate and they'll be conditioned to seek approval constantly, right? They have this kind of internalized sense of inferiority. They can have issues with self-esteem, they can have issues with self-doubt, they can have issues with perfectionism, and those perfectionistic tendencies are exhausting, right? The thing about perfectionism is there's healthy and unhealthy perfectionism. So healthy perfectionism looks like having high standards, striving for excellence, but not having it rule your life, right? You're not ruled by black and white thinking. Whereas unhealthy perfectionism is you're sometimes paralyzed when making decisions because it has to be perfect. You often don't trust yourself because you think that things have to be perfect. You strive to the point of absolute exhaustion. It gets in the way of your relationships and everything because you feel like you have to be perfect. You have trouble admitting when you're wrong, which causes issues in your relationships because you feel like you have to be perfect, right? Those are like the unhealthy perfectionist tendencies that I'm talking about. So those tendencies are really common when you have a self-centered mother archetype. Right, the next is the overprotective or the anxious mother. So a mother who is constantly driven by fear, by worry, is really overly cautious of her child's safety, their decisions, their well-being. She completely discourages independence. So she's got a lot of overlap between her and the kind of overly possessive mother, the devouring mother. She views the world as a really dangerous place. She wants to shield her child from any risk. So the difference between this mother and the kind of devouring mother is the anxious mother comes purely from a place of anxiety. It's not necessarily because she doesn't have her own purpose. It's because she has her own anxiety that she needs to deal with, and instead of dealing with it, she just projects it onto her child. So if you have a mother that was anxious all the time, that really sheltered you, that kind of stifled your natural curiosity, that didn't encourage autonomy, didn't teach you how to fully be an adult, then as an adult, you'll grow up with these feelings of dependency. You'll probably have an anxious attachment style. You have trouble really putting yourself out there. You have a lack of self-confidence. Again, you have trouble with self-trust and with decision-making, and you don't feel prepared to be autonomous. Like you're one that would need to be micromanaged in the workforce, which can be a really paralyzing place to be, right? Next is the critical or the perfectionist mother. So this is a mother, and again, she has a lot of overlap with the narcissistic mother. She has really high standards, and she is really hard to please. So she can leave her child feeling like you can never measure up. She can use shame, she can use comparison, and then she kind of creates this inferiority complex within her child, within you, right? So the impact would be you would feel like you're never quite good enough. You'd have this strong sense of inadequacy. And again, it tends to develop in perfectionistic tendencies. I had a couple of different friends like this growing up. And when you talk about the comparison trap, they actually ruined, so this is how far it can go, they ruined my relationships with my friends because they would compare their daughters to me. So I had two different friends with very similar mothers, and their mothers took really, really good care of themselves, and their daughters went in the complete opposite direction, right? They were like, my mother seems too self-obsessed, I'm not going to be that way. So their daughters didn't really take care of themselves very much. Like they didn't want to pluck eyebrows, they didn't want to do their hair, nothing, because they were like, I will be different from my mother. And so their mother, annoyed by the act of rebellion, but not realizing that it was even an act of rebellion, would compare them to me. They'd be like, oh, look at Bethany. Look how Bethany does her hair. Look at how Bethany keeps her weight on track. Look at how healthy Bethany eats. Why can't you be more like Bethany? And I'm just over here existing, trying to be a good friend. And because of that comparison trap, my friends would get angry with me, right? Because their mothers are so busy comparing them to me that they couldn't see the beauty in their own daughters, both inside and out. So a mother like this probably caused issues with your relationships too, because how can you be confident in yourself if you're constantly compared to other people? How can you have close friendships if you have this bitterness and frustration building up because your mother's comparing you to all these other people? Awful place to be in, right? The next, and I think so many of us experienced some version of this growing up, because this was the gold standard of motherhood growing up in the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, right? It's having the self-sacrificing or the martyr mother. So this is a mother that constantly put her child's needs before her own, but at her own expense. All right, so it seems really generous, but it comes with a sense of guilt. So this is a mother that says things like, oh, my children are my top priority, but she completely forgets about the things that she needs. She feeds her children beautiful meals, but she's eating scraps herself, right? If your mother was like this, here's the issue. This always shows up this way. There would have been some sense of bitterness and resentment in her that meant that she would be making little remarks to you as a child. So she'd be like, oh, but I do everything for you. But I gave this up for you. But I did this for you, but that for you. And you didn't ask for any of those things, right? You didn't even ask to be born. You were just existing as a child. And so what happens as a result of having a mother that's kind of a martyr is you develop this sense of obligation to others. And so you struggle with boundaries. You feel compelled to prioritize other people's needs over your own because as a child, your mother was always like, but I do this for you, so you should do that. You should listen better because I sacrificed this for you. You should eat your food because I slaved over this meal. So you feel like everything is kind of quid pro quo. Like they did this, so I've got to do that. This can show up in ways like if you go on a date and a man goes, oh, what do you mean you're not going home with me? I bought you that really nice dinner. A woman who grew up with a mother who was kind of a martyr would feel like, oh, that's true. I guess I better go home with you. I guess I better sleep with you because you said so. Even if she doesn't actually want to do it because she's internalized this feeling of, you know, I owe somebody else. I'm not worthy of setting my own boundaries. So that's how that tends to show up. So if you struggled with boundaries, you probably had a mother who was a bit of a martyr. The next, there's only a couple more to go through, and then I'll start taking you through the kind of archetypes that this can create within you as a daughter, and then how to actually solve them. So the last one is the idolized mother. So sometimes a child sees their mother as perfect. So this can be either because a mother presents herself that way, or because the child idealizes her. So a child might put their mother on a pedestal because their mother never reveals issues. Everything seems perfect all the time. So even if she's not shoving that down her child's throat, because the child thought that there was no issues, they feel like they need to live up to their mother's standards. They feel like they can't hold their parent accountable as an adult. And again, this shows up by you as an adult. If you have this kind of mother, you struggle to find that sense of autonomy and self-worth that's separate from that particular idea. Like you feel like you have to be exactly like your mother. You need to do things just like your mother. So like one thing that I do with my children to prevent that, because I like to be very poised, I like everything pristine, my hair is always done, is when I mess up with them, I tell them straight away. I'll go back to them and be like, Mommy messed up, I stuffed up, I raised my voice, I did this, I was feeling this way, and so that's what I did, but that doesn't make it okay, and it's not your fault. I'm open with them about my issues. If they see me having a disagreement with my husband, I'll go and explain to them why afterwards. And I'll be like, this was my point of view, this was Daddy's point of view, and here's how we came to a conclusion together. Because I was a little bit wrong here and he was a little bit wrong there, right? So if you have a mother that's really open with her issues in a healthy way, in a way that has boundaries, where she is able to admit where she's at fault and take radical accountability for those faults so that it's not your fault as a child, this can prevent that from happening. But if you have a mother that just would never quite admit where there's issues, if everything was kind of covered up and swept under the rug, that can manifest in you feeling like you have to reach this perfect ideal, which leads to perfectionist tendencies, right? So we've gone through several different kind of archetypes, several different maternal, it's almost like a dark archetype, different mother types and how their issues can manifest in their children. So now I'm going to take you through the result as a daughter and how you can fix it. The first archetype that I see the most often is the overly devoted daughter. So you saw that there was a lot of different overlap with the archetypes. So there isn't necessarily, if your mother was this, then you'll exactly be that, because we're all individual people and the way that we respond to things can manifest in so many different ways, right? So the first is the overly devoted daughter. So this is you if you became too aligned with your mother and almost kind of took on your persona. If you tend to struggle with having a really distinct sense of self, if you tend to really rely on your mother's identity to navigate the world, if you tend to, if you feel or if you've ever been told that you have some signs of codependency, if you constantly think about like, how would my mother do it? If you viewed your mother as perfect or without fault, then you're probably the overly devoted daughter. The way that you heal that is to reclaim your sense of individuality. It's to reclaim your inner voice. So your journey, if you're an overly devoted daughter, is to become distinctly you, with a life that's guided by your values, your desires, your vision. All right, so here's some different healing steps that you can do. You can explore self-discovery through things like journaling, through things like your personal passions. Think about what lights you up. I do a personal assessment with my clients to help them really find out what their top values and their purpose is in the world. So you can reach out to me if you want help with that. But one way to do this on your own would be to think about, like, what's a topic that when somebody brings it up, you can't shut up. Like they bring up this thing and all of a sudden you're like, and you've got so much to say about it. That's probably something you're super passionate about, which means that you should have hobbies around that thing. It's probably something that you really highly value. And when you start exploring hobbies with things that you like that are separate from your mother's persona, that helps you to develop your own individual identity. The next is to start creating boundaries with grace. Gently establish boundaries that honor your individuality. So for example, I gave the example before of having trouble setting boundaries with men. One way that you would do that would be if you go out on a really beautiful date with a man, and afterwards maybe you kiss, maybe you start making it out and it's taking it too far. you'd be able to kind of put your hand up and be like, I enjoyed this so much, thank you. I'm gonna go home. Call me when you're ready to go out again. And that's it, and you leave it. And if he guilts you, you cut off the relationship, because you just went on one date with this guy and he's gonna guilt you into giving your body to him if you didn't feel like it. Ew, that should disgust you, right? Because you're not here to be taken advantage of. This is about what you want as a woman. You should have more power in dating. So one way to really start establishing boundaries is to push back when people are trying to get you to do things specifically their way, and to listen to your own inner voice. What do you want? What makes you feel good? Another thing that you can start doing is really validating yourself. So one way that you can do that is looking for when you do things really well, not belittling your accomplishments. Like if somebody says that you do a good job, saying, yeah, I did do a good job, and saying it to yourself, right? Not looking for other people to say it, not looking for external validation. Like, what do you think of you? What do you like about you? That's a massive part. And then a really big, and this is super tangible thing that you can do, is to start seeking role models outside of your family. So finding mentors or community that reflects your values and what you like as a person, that's completely outside of your family. You can do things like hire a mentor. You can get a mentor through work. You can find girlfriends who have values that you really believe in as well. You can have girlfriends that are role models too, right? But seek a role model outside of your family that's completely separate. That's a really good way to develop your own individuality, because if you're an overly devoted daughter, developing your own sense of self is really, really important. That's how you heal. All right, next is the rebellious daughter. So remember I gave the example before. I need some water. Talking a lot. I have hypothyroidism, which can give you this really gravelly voice, and it's driving me crazy because my voice seems to get more gravelly as I age, and it's just really not doing it for me, but water helps. Anyway, so I said that I had a couple of girlfriends growing up where they kind of went the opposite direction of their mothers. Their mothers had like a lot of perfectionist tendencies. They had really high expectations of them. So they were rebellious daughters. Their mothers were trying to get them to do a certain thing, and they were like, I am going in the opposite direction. So for a rebellious daughter, healing for you means finding balance between independence and connection, right? So you need to learn to become more vulnerable. So likely if you were more of a rebellious daughter where you try to go so far in the opposite direction to really protect yourself, which is a beautiful, wise thing to do, right? But you likely developed a sense of avoidant attachment style, right? Because you try to go so far in the other direction. You're trying to be hyper independent, like I will not be my mother because she's this way and I won't stand for it, right? So the way that you heal is to start to refine vulnerability as a strength. Embrace vulnerability, understand how courageous it is. It's to really challenge your either or thinking, your black and white thinking. So remind yourself that, hang on, I can be independent and be close to others. I can have these traits of my mother without turning into her and her dysfunctions. I can be myself and also have some overlap with people in my life. And that doesn't mean that I've lost my sense of independence, right? So really developing, like thriving in the gray, either or, not having that black and white either or thinking is really important for you. Lastly, my piece of wisdom for you is to really cultivate self-soothing practices, because if you're a rebellious daughter, you feel safest on your own, right? You feel safest when you're hyper independent. So learning how to soothe yourself without shutting other people out. Learning how to do like meditation, grounding practices, journaling, anything that you can do to really soothe yourself without feeling like you have to completely slam the door on people is important. And also learning how to co-regulate with others in a really healthy way. I think sometimes we try to foster too much independence in ourselves. We talk too much about internal validation. It is actually, as long as your main source of self-soothing is through you, as long as your main source of validation is through you and not the opinions of others, you should actually be co-regulating with other people. You should actually be getting some sense of external validation from other people, as long as that's not your main source and you don't crumble without it. Crumble, rather. So if you can learn to, let's say you've got a partner and you're hyper independent and you are the rebellious daughter, you have an avoidant attachment style, learning how to do things like, if you're coming up to your period and you're feeling kind of emotional, angry, give him a hug, like a long hug or a long kiss that gets your oxytocin going and encourages that kind of co-regulation. Same thing with your kids. I've got a I've got a person in my life, I'm trying to think about how to fully de-identify this, but I have a person in my life who has children. She has a daughter and she has children, and she is hyper independent. And she does not like to cuddle her kids at all. And her kids have very interesting attachment styles as a result. So if you're that kind of person where you don't like to let your guard down, where you find emotions annoying, where you tend to shut down if somebody tries to hug you, that's avoidant attachment style. That's rebellious daughter coming out. And the best way to solve that is to learn how to co-regulate. Give your kids a cuddle and listen to how your heartbeat feels, or rather feel how your heartbeat feels. Feel it slow down, feel how good that feels, and get really used to that feeling and how beautiful it is. All right, and then the last one that I'll go through is the inferior daughter. So in order to heal, you need to nurture your own self-worth, and you need to let go of external validation. So you'll know that you're an inferior daughter if your mother's standards always felt unattainable. So if you had a perfectionist mother, if you had a narcissistic mother is the other one. That's how you know. And even the martyr mother will often end up with a daughter like this. If you had either of those three kind of archetypes as a mother, then you tend to feel like you are unworthy, inadequate, like you don't deserve a seat at the table somehow. And the way that shows up is you really belittling your own gifts. It's you. And I actually had a touch of this when I was doing my university degree. This is when I first learned. It was my first year of doing my degree. And I found that I would do things like lower my standards of myself. So I would expect myself to get a high distinction, which is the highest grade that you can get in Australia. It's like an A. I would expect myself to get an A plus. I would expect that of myself to put in all the work, but I wouldn't expect that I was actually worthy of attaining it. So I would make myself do everything that I could to get an A, but then I would say, but you probably didn't do good enough, you probably got a C. Or I'd lower my expectations, that way I wouldn't have to be disappointed if I didn't achieve the perfect grade. So if you tend to do things like that, you likely have this type of daughter archetype, the inferior daughter. So here is how you heal. So you want to work on building your inner confidence. So one of the ways that you can do that is by setting small, achievable goals, right? SMART goals, to help you see your own competence, to help you see your own progress, and you celebrate every step of the way to really increase your self-worth. So sometimes if you're an inferior daughter, a way that this shows up is you'll be super multi-passionate and you're wanting to do a million different things all at once, and you'll take like 2 steps towards everything and then you just stop because you expected that it would have been perfect the first time, and if it didn't, then you're not worthy of the thing that you were trying to achieve. Right? So you try to start this business, then you try to start that hobby, and you do this and you do that, and you try that friendship, and then the second it doesn't immediately pan out, you drop it because you feel like it's not good enough, because you tried to do too many things at once, and so you didn't make enough steps towards any of them, and you didn't trust yourself that you would be able to achieve any of those things, right? So setting small achievable goals if you have an inferior daughter complex is really, really important. Next is rewrite your limiting beliefs. I want you to challenge the internalized belief that you have. So if your internalized belief is I'm not good enough, I want you to replace it with I'm good enough exactly as I am. I deserve joy. I deserve success. You need to so affirmations are one itty bitty piece of the pie when it comes to developing confidence, but they're important. Having a good affirmation playlist can be really good. You can look up, there's different meditations that you can do on Spotify that have positive affirmations about confidence. You can literally look up confidence meditation on Spotify or wherever you listen to your music, and you can listen to one for free. And it will give you all the affirmation that you need to set your day up to feel like you are successful and fabulous and delicious exactly as you are. And then lastly, it's really engaging in self-expression, expressing your thoughts through creativity. So through art, through writing, through speaking, you need to affirm your own unique voice. You need to affirm your own unique strengths, because competence breeds confidence. So as an inferior daughter, you often feel like you're not good enough. And one of the best ways to heal that side of yourself, to develop more confidence, is to get really, really competent in something. So again, instead of starting a million things and never finishing them because you felt like you weren't worthy of success in the first place, because you were sabotaging yourself in the first place, I want you to choose one thing and really, really stick to it. See it all the way through and see how freaking good you will get at that thing. Because you're a human being. I guarantee you, if you stick to it and you put in the hours, you'll be incredible at whatever that thing is that you really want to do. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was really helpful for you. This is just one aspect of the healing journey, but understanding what your relationship with your mother is like and how that has manifested in your adult life is super, super important. It's a huge step towards growth. Now, something that I spoke a lot about in this video is really developing your own sense of self-worth and learning what your highest values are and what you're most passionate about, finding your own sense of purpose. If you want really in-depth help with that, you can book in a one-to-one session with me or one whole day in Telegram where we can go through and do that together. And I'm so excited because as of right now, so can you see my Christmas tree is up? So as of right now when I'm posting this video, it's November 2024. Christmas is coming in January, so it's only 6 weeks away. I am launching a membership and I'm so excited about it. So this is the closest way to work with me outside of a one-to-one container. You will get access to a beautiful sisterhood of women. You get access to some of the one-to-one clients that I'm working with already. You get access to some of the one-to-one clients that I'm working with already, as well as women that have signed up separately through the membership. We will be covering, I'll be doing weekly Q&A, so you can ask questions about anything in your life. And I will give you wisdom, advice about it. You'll be able to get wisdom and advice from the other women in the group as well. So I'll be in once a week, but you'll get 24/7 access to everybody else. So you can all help each other out. And on top of that, I'm going to be dropping monthly trainings. So it's like this, but way more in depth on different topics having to do with relationships, feminine energy, psychology, healing, elevated communication, sensuality, dark feminine energy, like you name it. If it's in my world and you've seen a video on it, I'm going to be dropping trainings in the group, all included. It is $55 USD per month from now until the end of the year, and then the price is going to go up. So if you want access to that membership, message me and message me on Instagram, which is linked down below. It's The Curated Feminine, and we can make it happen. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you next time.